move on to the next section here, which is questions answered, or questions from I guess a lot of different places. Some of them come from YouTube. Some of them come from other places too, like well, a few of them we've got.
Instagram,
Twitter.
These ones here particularly come from YouTube, but we're going to start, getting comments from all of our different places. We get them as well, Instagram, Facebook. But as far as these ones here, we've got a couple of different questions, and so these are coming from our YouTube subscribers. And in fact, if you've got questions, go ahead and comment below, because each week we're going to be answering some of those questions here within this section.
Yeah. So the first question we have from Anthony is, how much time do you have to do your due diligence on a deal? Is it days, weeks, or months? That's actually a great question. In terms of how much time do you generally try to give yourself to do due diligence on a deal? How much time do you need is also a good question. Something that's also interesting about this is that the answer might vary a little bit depending on how much we're spending.
Yeah, well, and depending on the type of auction, depending on the type of property, it's really not a question you can answer just straight individually with one answer. Because with a tax lien certificate property, we could research it, an hour before the auction, and if we make all of the determinations on the value, what it is, what the interest rate is, within a matter of a couple of minutes, we can make a determination on a tax lien certificate if it's a tax lien that we're going to purchase.
Well, literally, we have we bought tax liens before, just on basically from random selection or from rotational bidding, just when when your name comes up, because that most all the liens are great liens, and so those don't really require a lot of research, because we know that nearly all of them are going to redeem. They're highly secure investments. But if it's something different from that, something like if we're buying a piece of property, then we definitely have a series of steps that we've got to get through in order to minimize our risks.
Yeah, also, another part of the question is how long should I start researching before the auction? Well, we're usually going to wait as close to the auction date as possible, because regardless if it's a tax lien certificate or, especially with tax deeds, those properties are going to get redeemed up until the auction date. So we don't want to spend a lot of time researching property that we can't potentially buy. So we'll try to limit that within a week if we can, even shorter if we have the ability. And it's really going to depend on the individual property. The more money we're spending, the more research, due diligence we're going to have to put into it. So the answer could be, very little. A matter of 5 minutes we can do that research, or it could be a couple of hours, or even more depending on the individual property.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for us to not really dig into a list until it's a few days before the auction. Actually, now that also, of course, you got to give yourself time to get registered for it. So, if we're serious about a sale, then we'll get registered for the auction, but we may not dig into the research seriously until that last week.
Well, and that's where it can be so relative. That's how we can't completely answer your question, because if it's a large list, if there's 50 properties on the list, then we're going to wait until the last few days, because there's only so many properties. There's 50 properties we need to research. But if we're trying to research a list like the Los Angeles sale, where they had 1,200 properties available, we may need a couple of weeks to try to whittle that down, but we're still going to try to wait to do it as close to the auction day as possible.
Yeah. Another question here. It says, great content. If I'm the winning bidder, I assume I get the quitclaim deed and cannot have a title insurance, right? Is it possible to flip right away, or do I have to wait the redemption period of 2 years? Thanks.
Now, with this particular question, on the redemption period with a tax lien, you're not going to be getting, the property. But if we're talking about a tax deed, or if we're talking about a redemption period like in Texas, for example, then that 2-year period could apply to it. But if we're just talking about a normal tax deed, you're going to get either a tax deed, it could be a quitclaim deed, and your question about title insurance is right. You can't get title insurance on tax deed properties. Most title companies don't issue title insurance, but there is a couple of specialty title companies or options that will offer title insurance without going through and doing quiet title.
Yeah. In fact, they basically just charge a premium for it. But they're good options if you did want to sell the property immediately to somebody that needed, that was bringing financing, basically said we needed to have title insurance. There are some companies that specialize in providing that kind of title insurance for a little bit of a premium. So it might cost you, $3,000 for the title insurance, but it basically gives you the ability though to sell it right away. You always have the power to sell tax deed properties right away. Meaning that you could sell it, but you can sell them as is. The one thing you can't do right away is sell them, with a warranty deed. But you can use something like those companies we were talking about, something like a tax title services company, to get a deal done, at full value.
Yeah. So when you buy that tax deed, like Shade said, you can either sell it as is, where they're not going to be able to get title insurance unless it's something like tax title services, or you can go ahead and go through quiet title process and then eventually sell it with a warranty deed at top dollar, where anyone can get title insurance on it because it's like any other property.
Yeah, but you always have the power to sell. It's just a matter of whether or not, how difficult, I guess, it might be to find a buyer if you can't go through and get normal title insurance.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, let's see. Next question. Hi, first of all, thank you very much for the great content you are putting out. I have a question concerning the resale auctions that California does instead of over-the-counter. Where do I get information about when and where the resale auctions? Thanks for helping.
It's a great question, Ralph. When it comes to the resales, most of the ones that we've seen are going to be held online. So they're going to either be held through Bid for Assets, some of the real auction websites as well that have their own individual county website for the tax deed auctions can do the resale as well through there. It's not something that's always going to happen, and with the resales, they can vary. Some resales they'll go ahead and resell it at, they'll just try to reoffer the same properties again at the same opening bid. But a lot of them will go ahead and discount those properties to a minimum bid amount.
So they can try to be sure that they sell it. I think the main places where a lot of them are posted for California, check Bid for Assets. That's really going to be one of the big sites though where you see a lot of their auctions posted.
Yeah, so they may hold them in person, and that's something that we're always looking at as we're pulling up the auction list for our membership program each month. And so occasionally there will be on-site auctions where they do the resale, but a lot of times they're going to be at these online auctions, like Shade said, on Bid for Assets.
Yeah. Another good question here. Do you consider heavily wooded lots good or bad, or doesn't matter? It's actually a great question. Because I would have to say that in most cases it's almost always usually a positive thing. To have lots that are heavily wooded. Really, all that means is that they haven't been cleared before. But that also means that they're less likely to have something like a grass cutting lien placed against them because they're more naturally landscaped.
Yeah, definitely. So really, it probably doesn't matter either way. Like Shade said, there's big advantages to having it a wooden lot where we're going to be less likely to have governmental liens. If somebody is just looking to build on it, though, they're probably going to need to clear it before building. So there is going to be some cost, and there is kind of a trend going right now where people are buying not necessarily a building lot, but large pieces of land that are wooded for that wood value. to actually be able to sell that wood at an additional cost in addition to the land value that they're buying by buying the property. So, it really kind of depends on the property, but it really probably doesn't matter as long as the lot has use underneath the wooded. So if it's a wooded lot, but it's on a big hill, well, that could be an issue. But as long as the land is usable underneath, a wooded lot is good either way.
Yeah. Last question here from Bob McKenzie. Never heard of a redemption deed before. That does not surprise us, Bob. That is not an official term you're probably ever going to find. I think from states like within Texas, their counties, they don't consider them redemption deeds. They're just their tax warrants. Their tax warrants. Every county has their own terminology, but when we were looking at some of those states that still had a redemption period that you had to wait out after you bought the tax deed, they didn't fit into either the tax lien, system or into regular tax deeds. They were something in between, and so we called them redemption deeds. But you could call them redeemable deeds if you wanted, or you could call them.
Yeah, really, the word redemption deed, like Shade said, was a word that we created back in around 2005 as we were trying to write our home study program before we started working with the seminar companies. Like Shade said, we looked at tax liens. We could see what tax liens were. They were all uniformed. Tax deed foreclosure, they're all going through a foreclosure and they're selling the actual property. But there's these states like Georgia, there's these states like Tennessee, there's these states like Texas, where they have this redemption period that's attached to it. And so we just thought, well, let's just call them redemption deeds is a classification that we can use and that our students can use to classify them. But each one of those states may call them something different. They may call them a commissioner's deed or a tax warrant deed. It's going to depend on those individual states, but that's the terminology that we use to classify those type of properties.
Yeah, which basically they are just tax deeds that have that redemption period attached to them, and so it's just the easiest way for us to explain that. So please leave questions below, and we'll try to get to your questions maybe in one of our future episodes.
Yeah, we're going to be answering questions each week, so go ahead and ask questions in the chat section. We're going to be checking all the different social media platforms and be pulling your questions to add to this each week. So again, thank you for watching, and go ahead and subscribe and comment.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you.